The race for robotaxis is heating up. Just today, Waymo announced they're now doing curbside pickup and drop-offs at Phoenix Airport. BYD announced a partnership with Huawei for advanced autonomous driver assistance software. This comes after an announcement last week of a partnership with Uber. Waymo said they're now at 100,000 autonomous rides per week, and Baidu is at 75,000 rides per week. But what many Tesla investors value more is the autonomous miles driven, with 70 times more than Waymo or Baidu. We'll also show you a video of what Waymo's teleoperation intervention looks like, and videos of how Tesla's full self-driving on hardware 3 cars differ from cars with hardware 4. To help me explore all this is Hans Nelson. He's got his own YouTube channel called Hans C. Nelson. Thank you so much, Hans.
Thanks for having me, Herbert.
This is right up your wheelhouse. You can explain a lot more about the people who are saying that Tesla's so far behind. Don't you know, Waymo and Baidu, Cruise, they're all already doing ride-hailing rides. Here you've got Waymo announcing that you can now do pickup and drop off at the airport. Let's take a look at this versus Tesla, who's not done any actual rides yet in real life. So Waymo just announced this a few minutes ago. Waymo's taking off at Phoenix Sky Harbor. Starting today, we're offering all riders 24/7 curbside pickups and drop-offs. And this week, we'll surpass 100,000 airport trips served to date. Preferred the SkyTrain? No worries. We still serve the 24th and 44th stations also. Let me go ahead and play that video. I'll turn that off or make us lower. Yep. So this is Phoenix Sky curbside, now available for all 24/7. That's pretty cool. There you go. That's all it was. What do you think about this announcement?
Well, I think once again, I'm excited to see more and more of these autonomous ride-hailing services continuing to roll out. I think that's a great thing for the industry as a whole. And it's great to see that they're expanding, because obviously Waymo's been operating in Chandler, Arizona for a long time. Just the expansion of the service there, that all of these things are definitely good for the industry. And then we'll kind of get into it further, but I don't think that it's the right way to frame the question to think that whatever Waymo's doing necessarily comes at the expense of what Tesla's working on at this point in time. And so, yeah, I'm definitely excited for them and excited for customers to be able to use the service. I think, if I was traveling through there, it's definitely something I would be interested in trying out. So, yeah, definitely no hard feelings.
So actually, I think the good news, of course, is Waymo, Cruise, Baidu, they're all out there and they're doing it. They're lobbying. The cities are allowing them. The airports are allowing them. It's actually happening. So then the question is, are they really far ahead? Is there going to be competition? And what's important, though, is that investors across the board are realizing that robotaxis are closer than we realize. And Tesla will have competition. So this is Al Root. He published this on Barron. And he said this: robotaxis are closer than some investors might expect. Again, very good news for Tesla investors. Tesla has big robotaxi plans, but it will have some competition. So that is the debate we're going to go and explore further. That's okay for one analyst, though. There's room for everyone. So General Motors, self-driving taxi company Cruise, and Uber, they announced a multi-year strategic partnership to bring Cruise autonomous vehicles to the Uber platform. Oh man, I might have misspoke earlier in the intro. I think I said Waymo. I think it's Cruise. Riders can hail self-driving Cruise vehicles in certain jurisdictions as soon as 2025. So it's one question investors had about Uber, right, and autonomous vehicles. So Uber CEO discussed his company's self-driving strategy. We're in late-stage discussions with additional global AV players to join our platform. We'll have more announcements in the coming weeks and months, he said in early August. Now we know it's one of those companies is Cruise. So it affirms our contention that Tesla will be one robotaxi player among others, even in the US. This is RBC analyst Tom Narayan. Now, Tom is interesting. We've covered him several times. He believes in Tesla robotaxi, but he puts out a long date, 2040, before a robotaxi comes into fruition. So it's one of those things where, he believes in robotaxi, but when you find out his dates, it's way, way further away. So he's obviously rating GM a buy. He gives a 54 price target for GM. He also rates Tesla a buy, 224 price target for that share. He sees Tesla offering its own network robotaxi, eventually capturing some 20% of the ride-hailing market. That roofs for other. What do you think about that article?
Well, I would say that one of the big things is that all of this extra investment and effort in the space and other additional players working on, different paths to their robotaxi solutions helps to basically justify and prove out that there is a market here. And I think competition obviously will drive, but just more improvement in the technology overall, all around. And so I think this is actually good for Tesla's ambitions. That you mentioned it, that some of these other players are also working on all of the regulatory challenges that are involved in getting these things approved. They're creating a blueprint for how to make that work in a specific jurisdiction. We're gathering data that can be shared with regulators on safety and working through all the frameworks on how to share that data and what are the requirements that regulators are going to want to see. All of those things are major challenges that Tesla is going to face. And so having other people that are working on these same problems is a positive thing. I think the other thing that, just for investors in Tesla to sit back and think about and really, um, I guess, digest is what it goes back to the scalability piece. A lot of people talk about first mover advantages, but there's also a very, the opposite, but also very valid idea of a last mover advantage. And so, Facebook would be an example of something like this, that there were
Hmm.
many different social networks, Friendster and MySpace, and a lot of these things that they really tried to create what eventually Facebook became prior to Facebook succeeding in that space. And then once Facebook succeeded, nothing really came up that was that, like, there had to be some meaningful way that it was much different than what Facebook was in order for it to succeed. Um, and so I think there's an opportunity here for Tesla to have that last mover advantage. And obviously, this is what they're thinking about in the long term: is what is the most scalable, most general solution to the problem. And most of the other efforts that are pursuing robo taxis or autonomous ride hailing, they're thinking of what is a way that I can get this to work. And they're thinking about things in the classic minimum viable product framework. And so they're trying to get something that works, and it works somewhere sometimes, and I can make some money on it. And that's great. Um, the approach that Tesla's taking obviously is a little bit different in that they don't need funding from actually having ride hailing customers in order to provide all the cash that they need to do their R&D. They're actually funding that through other means. It's a different business model. So they can afford to continue to develop this software without necessarily having to provide a um, an autonomous ride hailing service specifically. They can, they have lots of customers, and they provide services through sales and also through the sale of not only the vehicles but FSD itself or subscriptions. And so they can do all of their development work there, which really just creates two different sets of products that end up being put in the hands of the customers. And that's where, you get this very valid debate. Okay, who's going to win? Is it going to be the Waymos of the world? Is it going to be the Teslas of the world? um you know my money is definitely on Tesla being the first one to reach large scale, to be able to scale across many jurisdictions simultaneously, both in one country, but then across multiple countries. And the advantage of having that general solution, I think, is the right one to solve in the long run.
Love it. I like that late mover advantage. Famously, I think Apple is does that as well. Where like other cell phones can already do FaceTime. They can already do images of people, but they didn't make it easy. They don't have the complete solution. Apple does it, and it's a hit, instant hit. Everybody uses it, and they get it in volume, and it doesn't falter. Doesn't have any issues. All those kind of things have been resolved. We'll talk about how Waymo only has 300 cars in San Francisco, so Tesla can easily, copy that. So even though they sound like they're already there, they're already doing it. It's small numbers, and they're upside down in hundreds of thousands of dollars per car. So it's not easy for them to catch up. Okay, so let's take a quick look here. What happened to BYD? BYD announced this morning, right? They partnered with Huawei for advanced autonomous driving system. They're teaming up with Huawei. So this is a big deal. Chinese automaker BYD, we were wondering what they were going to do. This is just ADS though. This is not full self-driving. This is not autonomous driving. They call it autonomous driving, but it's limited in terms of what it's going to be able to do. So this looks like that it's going to be, partner for one particular electric vehicle brand that they are going to be launching, the Bao 8, under the Fengcheng Bao brand, will be BYD's first EV to use Huawei's Qualcomm ADS. That's going to launch in late 2024, late this year. So they hope that the partnership with Huawei will boost the sales of their premium Denza brands and improve Denza. It's a different brand now, and improve the profitability of these other two brands. So it's going to be multiple brands, it looks like. They only make up 5% of BYD's total sales in the first half of this year. So they're going to just step into it. So they want to increase the sales. BYD must compete with other companies that have many successful brands. Hyundai has all these different brands. Okay. And we'll give BYD an edge against aiming to grab a piece of the EV market. So Tesla has obviously been hammering home the importance of ADS in the future of global automobile markets. We've reported this several times that last year BYD came out and the CEO said that self-driving tech is basically impossible. However, they believe in ADAS, and they announced a $14 billion investment in smart car technology. Now they call it autonomous driving software, but it's basically driver assistance software. So it's a good move. Glad that they're doing it. What do you think about this investment?
Well, I think it's obviously, inevitable that they need to move in this direction to stay competitive in the Chinese landscape. There's very tech conscious consumer base in China. And so especially in their high end brands, if they would like to continue to sell to some of these consumers, they need to have something that makes the car feel like, from a software and technology standpoint, that it's competitive. They've got to do something. I'd be really curious to see, we didn't get a whole lot of information in this little article about what is it specifically that Huawei is providing. Are we talking about moving towards an entirely vision-based perception stack? And are we talking about a relatively low power autonomous driving computer inside the vehicle? Those are obviously the directions that I think they should move if they would like to copy Tesla and continue to remain competitive with Tesla. But we don't really have enough detail from this article to know really what the core of the technology is that they're pursuing here. And without having an ability to compare, apples to apples on the technology, it's hard to say what this will do as far as maintaining BYD's competitive edge, or even just preventing a slipping of BYD's competitive edge.
Yeah, I think Huawei is a competitor. Just last week, I reported on this. I can't remember the name of the small startup in China, a Chinese automaker in China, and the CEO said that he's appealing to many of the Chinese automakers. Please partner. He said there's only going to be 3 successful full self-driving technologies out there because it costs billions of dollars to invest in this. It's going to be Huawei, it's going to be Baidu, and it's going to be Tesla. And he was appealing to everybody to please partner with Baidu in this case. And that's what he was saying. So, BYD partnering with Huawei is a big deal. But like you said, I don't know yet if this is just ADAS, if it's going to eventually be autonomous driving. So we'll see where that goes. They're going to put in their feet in the water. So this page, ARK Invest, published some papers, some studies, and Alexander Mertz shared this. ARK just published this. Please read the y-axis. Maybe somebody wants to explain to people like Gary Black and journalists this notion. So if you take a look at this table that ARK Invest published, on the top, you can see autonomous rides run rate, okay? And you've got Baidu here at annualized at already 3.5 million actual autonomous rides given in actual, cities with people paying them money. You got Waymo here at over 5 million autonomous rides driven. Tesla has 0. Cruise had to, stop this particular year. So they got none as well. 2024, right? But if you look at the bottom one, if you look at autonomous miles run rate, cars actually there. If you don't worry about like did people pay for it, but you just think about the autonomous miles. If you believe that you need autonomous miles to actually develop the technology and that's required, look at this. I mean, compared to Tesla, we're talking about 1.8 billion miles, and that's going to go up to 6 billion pretty quickly because of the 7 million cars that are out there that has this ability to do this. So this is the article Tasha Keeney had written up. It goes, we're excited to see Baidu and Waymo scaling their robotaxi operations, right? Last week, Waymo confirmed that its 6th generation robotaxi, which is developed by Geely Zeekr, will cut the number of onboard cameras from 29 to 13, right? This was the 6th generation of their, 6th generation of their autonomy. It's going to cut the number of cameras and it's going to be a lot cheaper. And then they said that, but the cost for Waymo to outfit their car, because it's still very much LiDAR based, is going to be $100,000 is the estimate rumor per car. Waymo recently announced that it's ramped the number of autonomous rides per week to 100,000, right? Or Tasha actually tested it in LA, was impressed by the smooth ride. Baidu said that with their Apollo Go, they're now able to do 75,000 rides per week. And while they now operate 100% autonomously in Wuhan, they have a small fleet of 400 vehicles in other cities, right? Still human driven. So actually physically humans driving it, even though it's pitched as an autonomous robotaxi. And sometimes there's teleoperation as well. So with Waymo and Baidu are the first to market robotaxi operations, our research suggests that Tesla's training the autonomous system with 70 times more data, as shown in the second chart that we just showed. So they still believe that Tesla's data scale advantage is likely to lead to commercial dominance in its winner takes most opportunity. Once you get out there and you get out it's not just the fact that you have operations in, 400 vehicles here, 600 vehicles there. That's what's going to happen. What do you think about that analysis?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it reminds me of another competition that we've seen Elon engage in. So the New Shepard rocket is clearly the best rocket in all of space right now because
Blue Origin.
it was the first one this is Blue Origin's, New Shepard. It was the first one to land propulsively. It was the first one to take tourists into space. And so therefore, by those metrics, I think that it is clearly a superior rocket to the Falcon 9, just in any and every metric, obviously. That is, essentially the type of argument that I think is being made here with regards to Waymo and Baidu versus Tesla, is that if it all depends on how you define what success is. If you pull the bar for success down really low, then it's easy to say, hey, these players over here, they're ahead. But if you make the bar for success the actual correct solution that achieves the lowest cost possible, given current technology limits and scalability, then you wind up with something different. There's a reason New Shepard wasn't able to, it's not an orbital class rocket. It was a suborbital thing. And so they're not taking anything all the way up into full orbital, velocity. They're not moving anything around the Earth. They're just going straight up and coming straight back down. And that is the essentially type of solution that Waymo and Baidu have with these HD maps and with LiDAR, these things that don't have the intelligence necessary to really perceive an environment and make smart decisions and have to rely on lots and lots of rules and extra sensors that it's hard to make sense of. Okay, when should I listen to this sensor? When should I listen to that sensor? In my mind, that is the equivalent of a suborbital autonomous ride-hailing platform.
I love it. I'm just looking it up. That's fantastic. That's a great analogy. I love it because Blue Origin was first to get people paying them for this ride. But I think I just looked it up and what's a comparison right now? Can't remember. I just lost it. But they've never actually gotten their Glen. What is this?
Yeah, New Glenn.
The New Glenn launch is 0 SpaceX total launches 337. Dragon Crew launches 13. Now they haven't gotten people to pay them for it. Which one will you trust to get up there? Because they don't need
Yeah.
to get them
Well, no,
people to pay for it. That's not their
SpaceX has
strategy.
now. So the Jared Isaacman and
Yeah.
the Polaris missions, those are private citizens that are paying for commercial launches, or sorry,
Hmm.
yeah, commercial launches. And so there is space tourism that's happening on the Dragon capsule, and it's completely different. These are Jared Isaacman is flying all the way, all kinds of interesting missions that they've done, but they're spending hours and hours and hours, days. I'm not sure how long this upcoming mission is, but they're actually going to have a spacewalk. Like, you can't do a spacewalk out of the New Shepard rocket when you're like,
Yeah.
the entire length of the flight is a couple of minutes long. And so it's just a completely different level of capability that
It's
is
a
being
mhm.
pursued.
It's a great analogy because it's about scale, right? If you can get the rocket going up and down and up down as fast as possible, you can then reduce the cost of doing that, and then that's what allows you to actually break the business mold and what they're actually doing. That's the same thing what's happening here. So that's why I like this tweet from Omar's catalog. He said, "Look, Waymo serving all of San Francisco with just 300 cars right now. Hey, Tesla makes 300 cars every 90 minutes." If they wanted to, they can, if they needed new hardware to achieve driverless, it would only take them a few hours to make enough cars to serve major markets. This is the difference. Waymo costs them 100,000. They have to hand built, hand buy, they have to buy every single vehicle to outfit it. Meanwhile, Tesla's already pumping every single car they do is autonomous ready. And then, by the way, people don't realize, but Waymo, when they say that it's autonomous driving, many times there's a human there. Sometimes they're not, right, anymore. That's great, but there's teleoperation. They don't tell you that there's somebody in the back, customer service call center actually operating the car. And in this case, what we're going to look at here is an actual, support person. This car gets stuck, you got a person supporting it. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So this is a Waymo car. You can hear that little beep.
Heading to Apple 3rd Street Promenade. Please make sure your seatbelt is fastened.
Okay, so the car starts moving.
Press the call support button to speak with a rider support agent.
I think the car gets stuck. Doesn't know what to do. Okay, car stuck. Doesn't know what's happening. Oh. So if you see that, it says, "Our team is working to get you moving. Please remain in the car with your seatbelt fastened." So now there's somebody from the support center dialing in and controlling the car now. Okay, so that's how that works. And then the car gets moving out of there. So that's an intervention. What do you think about that? Like, I think the argument that people have, including myself, I actually think that if that's all it was a support person to get the car out of weird spots, that's something Tesla might actually have to do also. They might not need to have as many people. And that's why it costs so much for Waymo to provide this service, is people don't realize, like, they have to likely have one person for every 5 or 10 cars out there, versus Tesla will probably just need one every 100. But they'll still likely have to have somebody dial in just to help somebody out if they're stuck. What do you think?
Yeah, we've known that this was what was happening at both Cruise and Waymo for a while now. At one point, we even learned that Cruise had, I think, more drivers than vehicles, and so there was a less than 1-to-1 ratio that were operating these things remotely. Usually, not in 100% of cases, but when they were unsure about what to do. So this is just, I think, one of the first times that we've seen video, at least circulating around on X, of what it looks like for the Waymo vehicle specifically when this happens. But 100%, there's reality has so many edge cases. I think that this is one of those things that for the initial rollout of any service, and I think this is going to include Tesla, like, you just can't really guarantee with 100% certainty that you're going to solve every edge case. So then the question is, okay, how many edge cases how many drivers do you need? Can you have one driver covering 10 cars, 50 cars, 100 cars, 1,000 cars? And that's where the quality of whatever it is that your autonomous driving software is doing really comes into play. And I think that's one of the areas where Tesla will have an advantage, just because they have, like we've been talking about this whole time, so many more miles worth of data around interventions that are, already being engaged by humans using the level 2 system, that Tesla will have an incredible amount of data, and they've already got an incredible amount of infrastructure to monitor all this stuff. And so, yeah, I would agree that this is something that it's probably likely that we'll see Tesla engaging in, just like Tesla also uses human operators to do teleoperation of the humanoid robots in order to train the, machine learning algorithms that are doing body control and stuff on Optimus and doing tasks. Like, this is part of the training process that is necessary to actually provide these services.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So Alex Voigt had this fantastic post on X that I thought was great. He's saying this, right? Talking about Tesla and the people saying there's no way Tesla will succeed. Why? Here's all the things they've said. It'll never work without LiDAR. You need LiDAR. It'll never work without the radar. Why did you remove the radar? It'll never work just with cameras. It'll never work with that few cameras. It'll never work with this camera. You need the better high definition cameras. It'll never work if a camera isn't installed at the front. This was a lot of Tesla bulls even believe that you needed to have a camera right at the very front. It'll never work with that camera placement. It'll never work without the ultrasonic sensors. It'll never work with this few sensors. It'll never work with just neural nets. It'll never work without more redundant systems. And that's what Baidu was just saying just now with their 6th generation. You need redundant systems. It'll never work without constant internet connection. Some people think that that's required. It'll never work without safety driver. It'll never work everywhere. At night, when it rains, in a fog, in certain regions, in small streets. It'll never work when an emergency car arrives or when a police car stops it. You'll never understand human gestures. It'll never work at crossing. Trying to see who's crossing the streets, intervention. It'll never work at construction sites. It'll never work when something unexpected happens. It'll never work in my lifetime. It'll never work anyways. Any points there that struck out at you?
Yeah, I mean, it just reminds me of Elon's algorithm. Question every requirement, make the requirements less dumb. That's a lot of dumb requirements that, people tried to impose on what the solution had to look like, instead of, hey, what is the thing that it has to actually do, and can it do that?
But basically you agree, right, that it can do all these things?
Eventually, yes. Like, there are some of those things that it's still going to struggle with, sometimes more often than others. But yeah, over time, well, so one thing I would say is you can always, if we go back to the algorithm again, I'm not saying this is going to happen. I don't think it's likely that this is going to happen. But if, in fact, we do need some more sensors or something, it's a lot easier to add things back than it is to take them away. And, to Omar's point, like, you can, if it only takes a couple thousand cars to adequately cover an entire local market for a service, and we can say, okay, hey, we're going to use more sensors on this special 1,000-car fleet of Tesla Robotaxis for the first service that we're going to operate. And easily, we can do that. I don't think that that's going to happen. But I would rather play it on the side of, let's solve the core fundamental issues, which are vision, perception, with the simplest sensor suite possible. Like, you cannot drive without vision. It's not possible. So then the question is, okay, if I can't avoid having vision, can I have only vision? And I think it is possible, because humans do it all the time. So that's where it gets to, like, okay, if you've got that vision, then what you need is the intelligence piece. And based on the rate of machine learning progress in so many fields, I think that the intelligence piece is a matter of time. And the amount of money and effort and, all these other services that are starting to operate in this space, it seems like that time is sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And Tesla and Elon have been proving that it's working. So the big debate amongst the Tesla investors ourselves is, can Tesla's full self-driving work? Can Robotaxi work with hardware 3 cars? These are the old cars that didn't have the new hardware 4. And so far, it's looking like it is. People said that there's no way. And in fact,
I was not
Tesla,
one of those people.
yeah, I know you were debating this, and until now, which is, here we go. This is Tesla launching this new version of FSD that's now going to hardware 3 cars. You had Ashok Kalaswamy, who's the director of Autopilot, tell you that it can work in hardware 3 cars. And so this is happening. Here's Zach, Black Model 3. He worked with another guy named Arc Technic, and they compared the full self-driving on a car with hardware 3 in one of their Teslas, both Model 3s, and on a car with hardware 4, and they compared unprotected left turns and speed bumps. So this is unscientific. It's just one test, and you don't know what's going to happen. But in fact, the weird thing is hardware 3 did a better job than hardware 4 in the unprotected left turn. Now, this is just brand new, just launched out there, so it's hard to know. AI4 was interesting. It approached the unprotected well, creeped up to see traffic. Despite similar cross traffic to hardware 3, it didn't choose to go, and they had to press the pedal to say, hey, you should have gone already. It was being a lot more sensitive and careful. Hardware 3 definitely performed better here, but this could have been a one-time case. Yeah. So they're going to do some more. And in terms of speed bumps, both hardwares in both cars did not recognize the bumps, and they both drove at it very quickly. So it's too early to know. These are real world tests with some variables, but we've repeated tests back to back with similar results. They are just our unedited, honest impressions as always. We're both long-term owners, fans, shareholders. Both are multiple FSD purchasers in full. So yeah, I'm not going to play these, much at all, but basically, yeah, they shared some videos of how the hardware 3 car did versus the hardware 4 unprotected left turn. So that this one here did just fine. As it drove by, it was able to negotiate and make it happen just perfectly fine. This is hardware 3. I'm trying to get there soon. Yeah, you can see the car there. It's clear. It looks like it's taking its time. Oh, maybe this is the other one where they had to, they had to press. Sorry, that was the one where there's a hardware 4, they had to press. This is the hardware 3.
Driver would have went right there.
Yeah, you can tell by the steering wheel. That's an older.
This is the older version.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it seemed to have been able to do it just fine. There you go. Okay, so what do you think about that? The differences between hardware 3 and hardware 4? There might be, right? But it's going to be minor.
Yeah, I have basically been convinced by James Dauma that there's still a lot of room for hardware 3 to be able to run significantly better full self-driving software than it runs today. It does take some extra engineering effort to do. I think right now, the specific performance of 12.5, I think I'm not as worried about as them trying to figure out, okay, how do we, it makes sense to do development and push the bleeding edge of what can FSD do on the more powerful hardware for AI4 computers. And up until this point, all these AI4 computers were running FSD emulating hardware 3. And so we haven't even begun to unlock what the AI4 computer is capable of. And so I think it is it's inevitable, but B, it's also smart to say, okay, the future is AI4. We really need to start exploring the full capability of what AI4 can do. And then, but that's just basically an exploratory process, and they're learning all kinds of things when they do that. Then those things can then be incorporated into something that is also compatible with hardware 3. There's a transition period that it takes, and so I have been kind of watching very closely to see what does it look like for them to start this process now, where we're splitting and we're doing something for hardware 4 that's different than hardware 3. There are bumps along the road. It's taking longer than Elon said with the 10 days. That was, not only to be expected. Like I would have been shocked if we had gotten it in 10 days. So the delays I think are also expected, but ultimately they're, where I default back to is that there are millions of hardware 3 Teslas on the road. It's the vast majority of the fleet at this point in time still. If we can make Robotaxi functionality possible in the next 2 years, then hardware 3 is still going to be a huge percentage of the fleet. And it doesn't make sense for them not to invest whatever the resources are that are necessary. And I think it's mostly just going to be software, just optimizing, nipping and tucking, changing. We don't know. So on the one hand, we don't know how much smaller we can make these neural net models and get them to run really well. Right now, we're just finding out what they can do. And part of the process of finding out what they can do is we're just making them as big as possible. And then after we make them as big as possible, then we figure out, okay, now that I know what it can do, how do I smush it down and make it smaller?
Optimize it. Yep.
But that's at the very top of a whole stack of software that all of this stuff runs on top of. And so there's, every single layer of that stack. When you're doing development and exploratory work, you're not really worried about, am I optimizing every single piece of every single thing that is being done there? And so I think that these models are likely very, very inefficiently run, even on both hardware 3 and on AI 4. And so there's tons of work that can be done to make them run more efficiently, faster, better. And so I think people, the default is, everyone's always looking for what could go wrong. And I understand the consternation around this and people's fears. But at the end of the day, Tesla, if it costs a couple of $1,000s per car, whether that's in software efforts or eventually potentially even hardware upgrades,
and they'll just
but
do it.
on the benefit side, that's the cost, and the benefit side is you could make tens of thousands of dollars a year with this vehicle as a robotaxi. That is a no-brainer investment choice. And I think that the opportunity to just do that purely in software without ever having to do a physical recall and do some sort of a hardware upgrade is the most likely outcome still.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much. Lots we covered here today. Thank you so much, Hans. Follow him on his X account at Hans C. Nelson, as well as his YouTube channel. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye. I've created a website that is the most comprehensive resource for the Tesla investor. Please check it out. Simply go to my website at herbertong.com.